Okay, everyone, I'll get right to it. Don Lemon's co-defendant, Heather Lewis. The government moved to dismiss her from the case, and she was dismissed. Now, I had speculated last week that it was a case of mistaken identity, and indeed, it was. Now, the government disclosed the full details in one of its new filings this week. Heather Lewis was present in the parking lot where the defendants planned their attack on City's church. Okay, that's the parking lot of Cub Foods, but Heather Lewis isn't with that group. Now, pictured there, she's not there. Now, lots of people shop at Cub Foods. Now, her attorney told the New York Times she was there to pick up items she had won at an auction. Now, the government said in its new filing that Lewis was initially identified by the St. Paul, Minnesota Police Department, which was conducting an independent investigation for potential state criminal charges. Now, her attorney told the New York Times he suspected that the cell phone tower data showed Heather Lewis's cell phone in the Cub Foods parking lot. Now, investigators obtained her driver's license photo and matched it to video footage shot at the church. Now, apparently someone agitating in the church who looks just like Lewis. Now, her attorney admitted she bears a striking resemblance to one of the agitators. Now, Heather Lewis, falsely accused, is an engineer, not a member of City's church that I'm aware of. Now, she was pulled over on the morning of February 27th, taken into custody in handcuffs, and interrogated for hours. Now, she's never participated in activism, so she was bewildered. Now, the government says that after conferring with Lewis and her counsel, a prompt investigation into her alibi defense was conducted. Now, after executing a related search warrant, they moved to dismiss Lewis from the case. So, it seems that the agitator to whom she bears a strong resemblance could be added to the indictment in the coming weeks. Now, more new developments this week. Don Lemon's attorneys filed a motion for immediate disclosure of Brady materials and permission to seek reconsideration of the magistrate judge's order last week extending the discovery deadline to April 24th. Now, the basis for the filing, according to Lemon's attorneys, is the false accusation against Heather Lewis. Now, the defense attorneys claim it calls all of the prosecution's other actions into question. But does it really? No, it doesn't. Now, Don Lemon's attorneys say that the government only had 38 defendants in the dock and deliberately misled the court in asserting there were 39 defendants when it asked for 90 days to be added to the speedy trial calendar. 38, 39? Now, I burst out laughing when I read this motion. So, why did the defense even file the motion? Now, in my view, because it's a high-profile case, the defense is making its case in the court of public opinion through all of these filings. Because, let's be real, Don Lemon could be found guilty, so his attorneys are trying the case in a more friendly forum, the court of public opinion. Now, at this point, the job of the defense, in my view, and this is just how I view the case at this stage, the job of the defense is to salvage Don Lemon's reputation with the general public. Now, he has his fans, the Lemonheads, who will always support Don Lemon, but he wants to salvage his reputation as an alleged journalist, and he seems to have found a new calling, to speak for all journalists who may find themselves similarly situated. Although there are limits as to how wide of a net Don Lemon can cast. Now, Dana Bash of CNN, for example, now Lemon's former colleague, although publicly CNN is taking Don Lemon's side, as all mainstream news outlets are doing, Dana Bash was forced to admit tacitly that she herself would not have behaved as Don Lemon behaved at City's church. Let's watch.
And so if he wants to go forward with the defense that, aw shucks, I was just a journalist, he can do that. But obviously, as the indictment lays out, and which you didn't read on the air, there's a lot of things that Mr. Lemon did that you would never do as a journalist. You would never do that.
Okay.
Let's be honest.
This is not about me.
So Lemon's own behavior called his role as a journalist into question. Let's watch his behavior.
I think I could actually be sympathetic to some of the things where there have been challenges to compassion and decency. At the same time, these are what are called targeted interventions by ICE to keep the American people safe.
If I respectfully may interject here, I've been out reporting on a lot of these, and they're not targeted. There are no warrants signed by a judge. Most of the people that they detain don't have criminal convictions or criminal records.
I'm not going to get into the weeds.
But you should know that, though. Don't you think that's part of it?
Yes, and I could also show you many opposing sides. I'm not saying it's pretty. This is a part of a much larger dialogue in which one administration caused a great deal of chaos and havoc and danger for American citizens, and another is trying to correct that.
Do you believe that? Why honestly,
Okay.
let me talk you
Listen,
just on the
you're not
facts.
a journalist.
Yes, I am. I want to give you the facts.
No.
That's the interesting thing about this, is that they won't listen to facts.
When you pose as a journalist,
I am a
and you
journalist.
ask me
Journalists give
questions,
facts.
And then you start correcting me with facts and don't have.
You shouldn't hear the facts?
Of course,
that
I
most
should
of the
hear
people
facts.
who are picked up
but
are
will you
not,
give me the
have
facts on both sides?
That is the facts on both sides.
Now, journalism isn't a regulated profession like medicine, law, or engineering, for example. Literally anyone can call himself or herself a journalist, and even in regulated professions, if your behavior violates accepted norms, you could lose your right to call yourself a doctor, lawyer, engineer, etc. But journalist? Since it isn't regulated, you can call yourself a journalist even after, for example, being convicted for attacking a church service, disbanding the congregants, and forcing everyone to leave their own church premises. And then chanting, "Who shut this down? We shut this down!" And all in the name of changing U.S. immigration policy? The "I'm just a journalist" defense on these facts, in my view, is pathetic. It's not as if the pastor came at you with a rifle. And yet, the "I'm just a journalist" defense is becoming increasingly popular. Last week, we discussed Don Lemon's camera guy, Michael Walker Butte, who's now joining in motions filed by Lemon's attorneys. And there's another defendant, Shane Ryan Bowman, who requested and obtained permission from the court with no objection from the U.S. attorney to join Lemon's filings as well. Now, here he is. Now, there's his press credential. And apparently there's good reason why Bowman's attorney hasn't sought closer coordination with Lemon's defense. It's because Bowman implies that his behavior was different from Don Lemon's. Now, for example, this is from a motion that he filed. He's in the red jacket on the right side. His attorney says, Mr. Bowman can be clearly seen throughout the videos. He is not chanting, singing, marching, protesting, or impeding anyone. He simply stands silently and photographs what is happening. Another view? Okay, his attorney writes, he is again alone on the right-hand side, holding multiple cameras and taking photographs in his red jacket with his mouth closed. And now, apparently, there is acknowledgement from the journalist corps that it's not always a great thing to be Don Lemon. And finally, an update on William Kelly, a.k.a. DaWokeFarmer. Now, his attorney had filed a motion several weeks ago to modify his release conditions, which were the most burdensome of any defendants. This week, the magistrate judge granted the motion in part, removing almost all release conditions, except the one requiring Kelly to continue to report to pretrial services and submit to a mental health assessment. And of course, he has to stay away from City's Church like all the rest of the defendants. The U.S. attorney filed an appeal of the modification of Kelly's release conditions to the district judge in the case. So the appeal could be decided fairly quickly, and in the appeal memo, the U.S. attorney disclosed that Kelly is indeed viewed as a danger to the community. Although not a leader of the conspiracy, interviews with church congregants who are witnesses in the case apparently revealed that they feared Kelly the most out of all the agitators. Now, one of the release conditions was Kelly could not carry a firearm or other dangerous weapon. Now he can, which is alarming. Now, the U.S. attorney's appeal said that Kelly is a military veteran who obviously knows how to use weapons, so we'll find out fairly quickly whether some of the release conditions are reinstated. Now, I use the word alarming, and that's true for all of the now former release conditions, but is it surprising, in contrast to alarming, that the magistrate judge removed those release conditions? I'll say this, the Bail Reform Act emphasizes the presumption of innocence. Innocent until proven guilty. So it's a tall order to show that a person needs to be detained before trial, before being found guilty, in other words. But Kelly wasn't detained pre-trial. But now that the speedy trial window has been extended, the extended amount of time under which Kelly is forced to submit to those release conditions could have played a role in the magistrate judge's decision. However, my view on this is that the release conditions are justified, even those that prohibit travel outside Minnesota, because now his GoFundMe is at $120,000. He could take that money and leave the country, for example. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.